Let's kick off our bulletin right here. Health Minister Dr Zweli Mkhize elected not to attend the Health Portfolio Committee meeting today, citing legal reasons. He had been invited to account on the irregular 150 million rands communication contract awarded by the department to his associates. Mkhize has denied that he benefited from the contract, but reports suggest his family home was maintained by proceeds of the contract. His son also benefited with 300,000 and a vehicle.
A no-show by the health minister as he argued that the matter in question is sub judice.
I last spoke to the minister last night, and he indicated to me that he has been advised that because of this investigation in his department that also involves or touching his name, he has been advised that legally it is not a correct thing to then be the one leading the delegation to brief us.
Opposition parties, however, believe the minister's reasoning is misdirected.
Matters are sub judice when they're before a court of law. This matter is not before a court of law. This matter is being investigated by the South African Police Service, and it's being investigated by this special investigative unit. Those two things are not a court of law, and the rule of being sub judice only relates to a matter being in front of a court of law.
I agree the sub matter is according, in my view, not sub judice simply because the special investigation unit is still busy with their investigation. The matter is reported to the South African police, and it is not, I agree with my colleagues, it is not before the court of law yet.
Part of the reasons why he said he did not want to resign or could not resign was because there was no link between him and the corruption regards to digital vibes, right? And so it becomes important for us to discuss any report pertaining to the matter of corruption.
The ANC has come in defense of the health minister.
Because this is also helpful, that tomorrow people should not helter-skelter rush to the court opening up a case without evidence, so that they hope that through the DG they'll get evidence that will enhance their cases or influence the political end.
While the Director General said he also received similar advice to the minister, he disclosed limited information. He says the forensic investigation that found the contract to be irregular is now with the special investigating unit.
We can't treat that report as a final report because for sure, I mean, they have extensive powers like summoning bank accounts and doing all the other issues which the forensic investigators did not have that.
The DG has also touched on what's being investigated by the SIU.
One of the key issues that report raised was the issue of overcharging of the contract, which specifically with a specific instruction from the SIU that that's one of the areas that they are investigating, and in addition to the irregularity.
Meanwhile, some legal analysts believe the sub judice rule has been abused.
The rule is also not an absolute one. It is only applicable if disclosure of information will be prejudicial to the administration of justice. And this has clearly not been demonstrated in this case.
The committee will seek legal advice on whether the sub judice rule is applicable for Minister Mkhize. Ulilani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Now let's bring in a political analyst, Dr Dale McKinley now. Dr. McKinley, thank you so much for your time. Perhaps let's begin here. What's your reaction and your take on Dr. Mkhize refusing to appear today, citing the sub judice matter?
Well, I don't think it's very surprising. He is hiding behind the sort of legal fig leaf, as your report covered. And in some ways, some people would say, well, look, unless he's been charged, that he has the right to do that, and he's going to basically remove himself from this. But in politics, as we all know, perception matters just as much. And what people think is the case versus what the reality might be is very, very crucial. So in not appearing, he basically puts more clouds over his head. More people are going to ask questions. The political party opposition are going to obviously make hay of this. And generally speaking, he's going to come under more pressure. So I don't think it was it might have been a smart legal move, but I don't think it's a smart tactical move on his part, because if he's going to get out of this, which remains to be seen, he needs to be completely upfront about everything, and he needs to be seen to be willing to discuss with the public and come clean on whatever the case might be with this saga. So I think it's too early to say, but I don't think it was a very smart move on his part.
Now, I don't know if you watched the Portfolio Committee briefing, Portfolio Committee briefing on health this morning. Some parliamentarians obviously is saying that Dr. Mkhize not appearing today was, in essence, a sign of disrespect because he is accountable to Parliament.
Well, and in this case, this kind of behavior has been going on for a long time. We've seen so many examples over the last while of ministers, deputy ministers, just basically refusing to come simply because they either don't want to answer those questions or they are feeling a bit uncomfortable in the context of the spotlight being shone on them. So this speaks to a more general crisis, which is parliamentary oversight of our executive and of the politicians. I think Parliament has a lot to answer for itself because essentially, for a long period of time, there was no pressure on politicians to be accountable to Parliament and to come say anything. And I think the culture has now become, well, nothing is really going to happen to me if I don't. So in that sense, this is just the latest example of something that is a much deeper problem that we have.
And it's very interesting that you say that, because one parliamentarian during that briefing actually mentioned that some of the things that are coming out of the Zondo Commission are highlighting how more and more parliamentarians are complicit to state capture.
Yes, as I said, Parliament has quite a lot to answer for. And, these are our elected representatives. So they're the most directly accountable to us as the citizenry. And they haven't simply been doing their jobs. So we can be critical of the minister, and we should, and we can be critical of all of those who are attempting to try to avoid accountability. But oftentimes I think we let the parliamentarians off the hook because it's really their job on our behalf, in this case, as a representative, to do these kinds of things, to ask the hard questions, to follow up, to be very, very, serious about taking, the Constitution seriously and their mandate seriously. And we haven't seen that. And that is very much lending itself to a situation in which politicians and director generals and officials within the state are able to get away literally with, stealing the people's money.
Now, Doctor, I have to ask you this. How should President Cyril Ramaphosa deal with Minister Mkhize, considering the fact that the SIU investigation is not yet concluded? And of course, many saying that he faces a dilemma himself as the president to make that call.
Yeah, he's stuck between a bit of a rock and a hard place right now, because on the one hand, he's correct that, in a sense, he must allow the SIU and the investigation to run its course until such time as there are possibly charges. This is consistent with the ANC, his own party's sort of step-aside rule, which is those that have been charged should step aside. Where allegations are there, then it becomes a difficult story. But I think in the context of perception and the context of what is right and politically smart, I think the writing is on the wall. The damage has been done now with Minister Mkhize. His denials have proven to be a bit, suspect so far in terms of the full accounting of what went on with regards to the tender and who benefited. And the rumors that he is about to resign or be sort of pushed out, I think, have some degree of currency, precisely because it's politically unpalatable for the president to keep on a minister who's responsible for the entire rollout of our vaccination program and the COVID situation, when most of the population is asking questions about his integrity, and that is politically simply not sustainable.
And as you know, it is through some brilliant journalist investigation that all of this evidence against Dr. Mkhize is weighing heavily on him, being pushed to sort of step down. Do you think that the party will use the step-aside resolution and demand that Dr. Mkhize steps aside if he chooses not to do so?
Well, I think the president has to be very consistent here. They have to tread quite carefully, because in the Ace Magashule case and in the other cases where the step-aside rule has been applied. It's the entire debate has been particularly around whether or not they've been formally charged with whatever it is that they need to answer for. If they haven't been charged and it's simply thought that they did something wrong, well, then according to that resolution, they should still be allowed to maintain themselves. They could step aside temporarily, and I think that's what Minister Mkhize should do. He should say, look, there's clearly something wrong here. I have a case to answer. I'm going to step out of my role right now. People would respect that in that case. And I think the ANC must allow that and encourage that to happen, not just with Minister Mkhize, but with a whole range of their members who are under similar clouds of controversy and allegations, because the only way they're going to clean the name of the party and they're going to regain the trust of the population is that they're seen to act, not simply when people are in court and being charged formally, but when there is clear evidence that there has been wrongdoing. And I think that's fundamentally important for the president to consider.
And from an image and reputation perspective, what is the world to make of a health minister of this country, being implicated in such charges when we are all faced with a pandemic, particularly given that President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to be attending that G7 meeting?
Yeah, it doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help our reputation in any way, which has already been sullied quite substantively over the last many years as a result of what's come out of, for example, the Zondo Commission. So if President Ramaphosa wants to be taken seriously, if our country wants to be taken seriously as a beacon of constitutionalism, of human rights, of accountability, things that we have been sort of relying on for many, many years, but are sort of tattering at the edges in some ways, or, that he needs to basically seem to be acting and acting not just on the domestic stage and with regards to intra-party issues, but internationally to say to people, look, we're still there. We have our problems. Admit the weaknesses. This is what I think when you take people into your confidence and say there are problems, there are things, we're trying to work on them, and we're going to do our best. When people feel as though you're making an attempt, I think they will accept that. I think where people and South Africans in particular and others abroad are saying, well, you're talking a lot of the good game, but we don't see it in play. And that's where the deficit is, and that's where it needs to be filled.
Dr. Dale McKinley, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for that analysis.